All right, guys. So today, so some of you are going to be a little bit mad at me for this, um, but I returned my Canon R1, and I actually traded in my Canon EOS R and all of my Sigma lenses, and I did it for a variety of reasons. Um, I absolutely love Canon. I think Canon is among the absolute best camera systems in the world. Their color science is on point, their bodies are on point, their lenses are on point. There's very little that I dislike about Canon. In fact, I don't dislike the R1 or the EOS R, or any of the R line at all. I think they're fantastic cameras. But I have been wanting to get into the medium format scene for a little while now. And I was looking at the GFX, I was looking at the Hasselblad, I was looking at a Phase 1. I mean, I can't even afford it, but I was looking at it. Um, and they all are really, really great cameras, but they're all crazy expensive. And I came to the conclusion that I'm like, okay, if I can't do if I can't do a medium format camera, what are the highest megapixel resolution cameras that I can get? So I was looking at the Fujifilm X-H2, and I was like, okay, this might be decent. I went and looked at it B&H, and I tried it out, and you know, I'm disappointed for a few reasons. Fujifilm has the best color science of any camera out on the market. Absolutely. Without a doubt, there's no contest. They have the best color science. And their cameras are really good. But I feel like their cameras are targeted at a very specific market, which is film shooters, or people who want a camera that is going to produce a product that is very similar to film. And there's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's great. What I don't like about their cameras is their menus. And I feel like their menus are insanely overly complex. And I don't want to spend a ton of time. I don't want to spend a month learning a new camera when I already know everything that I need to know about the balance between ISO and shutter speed and aperture and focal length and white balance and shooting modes and all these different things. I already understand all of this. I've been doing this for years, and I don't want to spend a month learning a like an actual month learning a new menu system. That is just it's just not practical for me. So what I decided to do, and this is a little bit out of the norm, but for a while now I've been looking at the Sigma FP line of cameras. And the Sigma FP is a 24.2 megapixel camera, shoots at 4K. It's a great full frame sensor. It's a very small body. It's very modular. There's a lot of things you can do with it. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this camera. So I was looking at it, and then the guy at B&H was like, well, how about the L series? And I was like, okay, what's the L series? And so he showed me the FPL, and it is 61 megapixels, shoots at 9K, shoots at 8K, shoots at 6K, shoots at 4K, has a 9K crop factor, is the small format. The menu is really, really simple. It's very uncomplicated, which I love. It doesn't have a flip out screen on the back, which I personally cannot stand. I hate the fucking flip out screens. They're stupid. I don't like them. I think they introduce a bunch of mechanical issues with the joints and the arms and how they wear out, and I just don't like it. And it has a fixed monitor on the back, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But just that, it's just a really small modular camera. So that's what I decided to get. Now you're gonna say, why does this box look so, plain? It's because I bought it used, and I didn't want to spend $3,000 on a new camera. But could I spend $1,800 on a new camera? Absolutely. So I did. So we're gonna talk about this camera a little bit. I have not opened this yet. I just got back from B&H. I think this camera is going to be really great. I think it's going to suit my needs perfectly. Just for what I really want to do with it. And I mean, just look at the size of this thing, dude. This is my hand. I have objectively big hands, but this, I mean, it's just so freaking small. And I think it's fantastic. And one of the things that I really, really like about this camera, that I love about my Sony Mavica, is it has a dedicated cinema and still toggle switch, which I think is super cool, because then I can set custom settings to each side, the cinema or still, and use those differently. Another really cool thing about this camera that I absolutely love is the ability to upload my own LUTs. I have a very specific set of LUTs that I've developed over the years that I use on all of my photography. And now I can upload those into this camera and use those to shoot with. And in the end, when I'm done with my shoots and I get home and I'm culling all my images and I'm processing, there's very little post-processing that I'm going to need to do, because all of the shots are already taken in that LUT, which is phenomenal to me. And I know you could do that with the Blackmagic Cinema Pocket Cams. I had one of those for a while, but the immense capability of this camera is crazy. It has these fins that go along the sides and the bottom, and that's where it releases all its heat. I've watched a ton of videos on this. Everybody says that, you know, they've never had an issue with it overheating. The only thing that I would say that I don't particularly care for is where the SD card slot is, and the battery size. So the SD card slot is mounted here underneath the battery, and then the battery itself is actually pretty small. What I ended up doing, which I don't have yet because I ordered it from Amazon, but what I ended up doing is I ended up buying one of the small rig NPF batteries for Sony, and then a modular cage mount that I will actually end up mounting the battery mount to the side of the camera. And then that battery allows me to run a USB-C cable directly to the camera to charge the camera, because that's how you actually charge the battery for this camera. There's no battery charger for it. You just plug the camera directly into USB-C power and it just charges the battery, which I think is fantastic. One of the huge differences between the FPL, besides the megapixel count, one of the huge differences between the FPL and the FP is you can actually charge the camera while shooting, whereas the FP, if you want to charge the camera, you have to turn the camera off. So that's another kind of one of those reasons I was like, okay, that's like a no-brainer to me. So it comes with, because I bought it used, it comes with a pretty generic charger. I probably won't end up using this, actually, if I'm being honest. I have a whole bunch of 85-watt chargers, or charging bricks, that I'll end up using. This cable, though, is a very heavy-duty super sync cable. And I actually tested this, I tested this at the store, one that they had like this, and it actually transmits up to 10 gigabytes per second, which I think is fantastic, which is going to be really great for this. The other kind of downside for this, though, is the SD card. So because this shoots in DNG or Cinema DNG at 8K, 4K, 9K, 6K, that means the file sizes, because they're completely uncompressed. And this is really interesting. Even Blackmagic cameras don't shoot fully uncompressed cinema files, and this shoots completely uncompressed cinema DNG raw files. And that's really cool because I get all that data to play with in, you know, my applications that I use. But that also means that there's a ton of data for each photo and for each video, which means the file sizes are really large. And so I ended up buying a 512 gigabyte ultrasonic SanDisk fucking SD card. which probably still isn't going to be enough. But a lot of people recommend that you get one of the M.2 SSD holders, mounts, whatever, that you can mount onto the side of the camera and then just run the USB-C cable from the SSD directly to the camera. And this camera allows you to record video to an external drive like that, which I think is really cool. So those are kind of a little bit of the downsides. Also, because it's shooting in Cinema DNG RAW, it means it drains the battery pretty quickly. And that is, again, why I decided to get the small rig NPF battery, because it's 10,000 milliamps, which is crazy. So in addition to that, the other thing is this camera is just really, really small. The form factor is really small. I was holding it in my hands. I was like, there is no way that I'm going to be able to use this camera effectively without getting a cage. So I got a cage. So this is the 8-sim cage for the FP and the FPL. Again, I haven't opened this yet, so we're actually going to put this on. Sorry for all the crinkling. We're going to put this on the camera, and we'll go from there. So the thing that I like about this cage is it gives that extra grip, which I think is going to be really, really solid. All right, so I'll put this down. And it gives me 3 little screws. There's only 2 mounting points, but it gives me 3 little screws just in case I lose one. And we'll bring over all my handy dandy Allen wrenches, because I'm going to end up needing those. Those all backing line. All right, so this is really cool. A lot of cages for cameras you actually have to like take apart and like reassemble. This one kind of just slides in, which I think is pretty nice. And so we're gonna take this guy. Put him in this. So there's a little screw hole right here on the side of that. I'm not going to tighten it super tight just because I have another screw. There's another hole on the bottom that I'm going to screw into. And I don't remember where it is. Oh, it's the front. Okay. This might be a little bit more challenging than I anticipated. There we go. All right, so now let's just talk a little bit about components and screws. After building PCs for as long as I have and working with electronics for as long as I have, you never really want to tighten something so tight that you can't get it undone again. Like, I often will tighten something to the point of what would be considered machine tightening. And you just want to be really careful when you do that. I want to get it as tight as possible because I don't want it ever to move. But you should be pretty careful when doing that. I'm just going to hold this here for a second. Because you don't want to strip the screws. Because if you strip the screws, then, I mean, if you don't ever plan on taking the cage off, that's fine. All right, there we go. So that's probably as tight as I'm going to make it. So yeah, that is the battery cage, or not the battery cage, but the cage for the camera. It's got a nice grip to it. It feels pretty solid. I wish there was another screw that I could put in here just because I wanted to make it more secure. But there's a reason they don't do that, and it's because there's a viewfinder and an EVF and some other things that you can attach onto the side here, which I'm not going to end up getting. But the one thing that I will end up getting though is a cinema handle. So small rig makes a pretty nice cinema handle that has 2 different screws, and I'll get that and attach it to this the cage right here. And then I'll be able to, kind of hold it and shoot as I do that. It's just because I don't have movement in my left hand, and so I need something a little bit extra to kind of hold on to. Okay, so let's talk about lenses. We're going to set this aside for the moment. The lens that I decided to get is the Lumix S series S50, and this is the 50mm 1.8. I really love Lumix lenses. I really love the Panasonic technology. You know, I think they're really good. They've been making lenses for freaking ever. And for the price point, and I'll be honest, the price point is pretty low. I think it was like $350. It's not crazy expensive. So for the price point, I think it's pretty solid. But also, Lumix just makes really good glass, and they have been making really good glass for a long time. And I feel very comfortable with the price that I paid for the lens, but also the quality of the lens as well. And it comes with a little hood, which I think is great. I have a love-hate relationship with hoods. I don't ever really use hoods a lot, if I'm being honest. It's nice to have, but it's also one of those things that I'm just like, because I'm usually in studio, I don't really shoot outdoors a lot, and so the only time I would ever really need it is if I'm shooting outdoors. I would never really need this in studio, and so for me, it's kind of like, I mean, it's cool, but I'm not really ever gonna use it. So let's go ahead and put this lens on. Obviously, this is an autofocus lens. I don't shoot manual focus. Again, simply because of my left hand, and it makes it really difficult. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's kind of what the camera is going to look like. There's a few other things that I'm going to get. Again, I'm going to get that battery, the MPF battery mount, and that's going to sit on top of the camera right here. And then the small rig handle I'm going to put on the side here. I might end up getting, Small Rig makes a not a micro, but a M.2 SSD enclosure that you can, or a mount that you can put probably on the bottom of the camera, and then slide a SSD enclosure into that, and then you can run that to the camera. The only problem that I see with that, right, is, again, this camera only has one USB-C port, and a micro HDMI out. And so, like, if I have my battery on the top and I'm running my battery to the camera to charge the internal battery, then that takes up the USB port that I would end up using for the external SSD. And so, you know, maybe there's a USB-C cable that is a Y cable that I can plug in two different things to, and it can, like, charge to the camera, use the battery to charge the camera, but also from the SSD to the camera. I don't know if the camera will recognize it like that and actually utilize that, but I mean, that could potentially be an option. The other thing that I got with this camera is a UV filter. Let's be honest, I think UV filters are a little pointless. You know, again, I'm shooting mostly in studio. I don't really shoot outside a lot, at least not with these pro cameras. And so to have a UV filter doesn't really make sense to me. But I got it just in case. I think it's nice. This one is made by Chiaro. I always want to say Cairo, but it's Chiaro. It's pretty nice. It's decent. It's a 67mm. The other two ones that I got are the K&F Mist, or the Nano K Mist filters, and I got a Black Diffusion 1/4 and a Black Diffusion 1/8 mist filter. And I got these for the reason because I do a lot of, like, boudoir photography and a lot of, like, 1970s-esque kind of really moody, lighted, filtered photography. And the mist filters just do a really beautiful job at light refraction and creating glow. So I got those, and I'll end up using those for those shoots. But, you know, that's pretty much it. You know, there's not a lot that I think is going to go into this camera at this time. Again, this is the Sigma FPL. 61 megapixels. I think it's fantastic. I'm going to end up using this for a lot of portrait photography. I might end up using it for some fine art photography. I might go to some museums and take some really high resolution images of those paintings. But mostly it's going to be for portrait photography, and you know, that's kind of what I do as a business, and I think this is going to be a really, really solid option. So anyway, again, this is the Sigma FPL with the Lumix S S50 lens, and the 8 sim cage for the FP series cameras. So I just want to say I'm not sponsored by any of these companies. They don't know I'm making this review. I didn't ask for permission. They are not going to see it before I post it. I just kind of want to tell you what's going on. So anyways. All right, guys. Well, that's going to be it for me today. I will see you guys later. Peace.